Hello, everybody, and welcome to Atheist Sunday School, your one-stop shop for everything Atheist Sunday and school. And boy, do we have a show for you today. Today we are covering Mark chapters 7 through 9. It's going to be amazing.
We're going to talk about the Transfiguration today. And, of course, Jesus feeds some more people.
Yeah, Transfiguration, almost as cool as the transformation of Enoch into Metatron.
You know what? I don't know if anything can compare to that transformation.
Yeah.
No, that guy was very much transformed into a bunch of fire.
And before that, a planet-sized thing with planet-sized wings.
That was while he was fire.
Mm-hmm.
Enormous fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, just really, really scary.
Copious and unquantifiable amounts.
Almost as much fire as the mixtape with the Lawrence diss track on it.
That would be pretty fire.
Yep. So.
Jason, good to see you.
Hi, Jason. So I
guess hi, Justin, too.
Yeah, hi, Justin. I have the King James Version of the Bible.
I have the English Standard Version of the Bible.
I also have the NIV Study Bible and the Jewish Annotated New Testament.
We have Erdman's commentary on the Bible. We have the Greek New Testament, and we have a textual guide to the Greek New Testament.
As well as the New King James.
Yes, the New King James. And
Hermenia Mark by
Adela Yarrow Collins.
Yarrow Collins.
Yeah, the wife of J.J. Collins.
Oh.
Yeah. So they're two.
And the cousin of Phil Collins.
That would be surprising, actually.
And the inventor of the Tom Collins cocktail.
Yeah, that one tracks. Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
100%.
We also have the text of the New Testament by Bruce Metzger and the historical Jesus in context by...
As well as the Oxford Companion to the Bible.
Yeah, but no one talks about that. We don't talk about that. All right, so...
It's kind of a stain on biblical literature.
In terms of... it is useful for people who've never read the Bible.
Yeah.
And don't plan on it. In which case, yeah, it's very good. It's very good. But doesn't help us at all here.
So after we're done with the readings today, we'll be more than halfway through Mark.
Yeah, that's true. Mark is the chapters seem to be longer, but there are of course less chapters.
Yeah, it's not like Matthew, which was, it kept going on and on and on. It's almost like it was written after.
They had to add some more stuff. Yeah. All right. So for this section, it looks like we have a dispute with the Pharisees coming up
again.
Yeah. Another one.
Wow.
I mean, hey, those Pharisees, they really know how to push Jesus' buttons.
Yeah, I guess they do. Well, then why don't I start us off with chapter 7 from the King James Bible.
Yep.
The best Bible. Then came together unto him the Pharisees and certain of the scribes which came from Jerusalem. And when they saw some of his disciples eat bread with defiled, that is to say, with unwashen hands, they found fault. For the Pharisees and all the Jews, except they wash their hands oft, eat not, holding the tradition of the elders.
So,
yes.
Did you just finish verse 3?
Yes.
Okay, so it's interesting here with verse 3 a little bit. So, apparently, according to the textual guide to the Greek New Testament, it looks like it should be translated, or I guess in the sense, not with a fist. So where it says hand, I'm guessing is where that's going. But let's see here. So in a context explaining Jewish ceremonial washings, it is difficult to understand the significance of pugme. Literally, well, it's with a fist, but yeah, with the fist. Because of this difficulty, some copyists omitted pugme. Others replaced it with a word that gives a better sense, such as pukna, often or thoroughly, or in a moment or at the first. Various explanations of with the fist have been given by scholars. Hooker gives 3 possible meanings: with a fistful of water, or up to the wrist, and with cupping the hands to make it small. And states, quote, whatever the exact meaning, it would seem that the purpose was to cleanse the hands with as little water as possible. In any case, it is important to know that, quote, what Mark describes is ritual purification rather than hygienic hand washing. Among modern translations, the RSV states in a footnote that the Greek word, whose meaning is uncertain, has not been translated. The NRSV seems to follow one of the variant readings, quote, do not eat unless they thoroughly wash their hands. Some scholars understand pugme in this context to mean up to the elbow, and this is the basis for the New Jerusalem Bible rendering, quote, and never eat without washing their arms as far as the elbow.
And
so,
where was that written exactly?
What do you mean? Where was what written?
That
word that we're talking about?
For washing their hands up to their elbows.
Oh no, that was an interpretation of the word there in context, because if we read
well, it's
verse
relevant 3, because according to Eerdmans, the Josephus said that the Pharisees imposed on the people many laws from the tradition of the fathers not written in the law of Moses. He wrote that in the Antiquities of the Jews, and such a distinction is made by Jesus himself at the end of his heated reply in verses 9 through 13.
Yeah, so the translation here in the Hermenia is, for the Pharisees and all the Jews do not eat unless they wash their hands up to the elbow. So that is it looks like that's the translation taken up by Collins. But although the word there, it's not totally understood in context.
Yeah. Okay. And when they come from the market, except they wash, they eat not. And many other things there be, which they have received to hold, as the washing of cups and pots, brazen vessels, and of tables. Then the Pharisees and scribes asked him, why walk not thy disciples according to the tradition of the elders, but eat bread with unwashen hands? He answered and said unto them, well hath Isaiah prophesied of you hypocrites, as it is written, this people honoreth me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. Howbeit in vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. For laying aside the commandment of God, ye hold the tradition of men, as the washing of pots and cups, and many other such like things ye do. And he said unto them, full well ye reject the commandment of God, that ye may keep your own tradition. For Moses said, honor thy father and thy mother, and whoso curseth father or mother, let him die the death. But ye say, if a man shall say to his father or mother, it is Korban, that is to say, a gift, by whatsoever thou mightest be profited by me, he shall be free. And ye suffer him no more to do aught for his father or his mother, making the word of God of none effect through your tradition, which ye have delivered, and many such like things do ye.
Yeah, Korban. What verse was that?
That was in verse 11.
Verse 11. Okay, let's see. Yeah, but you say if a man says to his father or mother, whatever of mine may benefit you is Korban, which means gift. So the accusation of the mark in Jesus in verses 12 through 13 directed against the Pharisees and
Well,
the scribes.
Korban specifically is a sacrifice or gift to God. When something had been declared devoted to God, it was genuinely not permitted for the giver to retract the gift. Rabbinic tradition also allowed release from Korban when it deprived parents of their due.
Yeah, so apparently, according to Josephus, Theophrastus states in his work on laws that the Tyrians prohibit the use of foreign oaths and mentions Korban as one of these.
Yeah, the NIV study Bible has about this. Korban, the transliteration of a Hebrew word meaning offering. By using this word in a religious vow, an irresponsible Jewish son could formally dedicate to God, i.e. to the temple, his earnings that otherwise would have gone for the support of his parents. The money, however, did not necessarily have to go for religious purposes. The Korban formula was simply a means of circumventing the clear responsibility of children toward their parents as prescribed in the law. The teachers of the law held that the Korban oath was binding, even when uttered rashly. The practice was one of many traditions that adhered to the letter of the law while ignoring its spirit, that it is a gift devoted to God. By explaining this Hebrew word, Mark reveals that he is addressing Gentile readers, probably Romans primarily.
Well, all you Romans out there, listen up well.
Yeah.
You can't
Romans.
wait until we read Romans.
I guess, because then we'll be in a different part. It won't be the same story.
Yeah. Anyways, let me continue on here. And when he had called all the people unto him, he said unto them, Hearken unto me, every one of you, and understand. There is nothing from without a man that entering into him can defile him, but the things which come out of him, those are they that defile the man. If any man have ears to hear, let him hear.
We've heard that one before.
Yeah. And this appears to be him declaring all foods clean, right? Exemption from the kosher laws, though it realistically wouldn't be.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really make sense for it to be given his emphasis on following the law, and just not following the extraneous things that are added on by the traditions. So, for example, the word of the kosher law in the Bible itself, in the Torah, says that you shall not boil a calf in its mother's milk.
Yeah.
That has been interpreted by rabbis to mean you can't have a cheeseburger.
Yeah.
Right? But I think in essence what Jesus is saying is like, well, because he's had such a strict view of following the law specifically, that no, it just means you can't boil a calf in its mother's milk. It doesn't mean you can't have a cheeseburger.
Sure.
Right?
Wow. Yeah, I like cheeseburgers.
Cheeseburgers are good.
Yep. Anyways, let me continue on here. And when he was entered into the house from the people, his disciples asked him concerning the parable. And he saith unto them, Are ye so without understanding also? Do ye not perceive that whatsoever thing from without entereth into the man, it cannot defile him, because it entereth not into his heart, but into the belly, and goeth into the draught, purging all meats? Okay.
Interesting interpretation there. Sorry, what verse is that?
That was verse 19.
Verse 19. Okay. Yeah, so that's
Okay, the first issue above, eating with unwashed hands, is expanded here to the abrogation of all kosher laws. Although it's possible that this declaration affects Mark's interpretation of a saying Jesus found also at Romans 14:20, this is unlikely. The controversy over Torah among Jesus' early followers, e.g. Galatians 1 through 2, could not have been as intense had it been known that he nullified kosher laws. Rather, the saying might reflect an older Jewish apocalyptic tradition concerning the elimination of impurity at the end of time, as in Zechariah 14:20. But if we were to interpret this as him nullifying kosher laws, which it probably is not, then I guess his argument would be, well, that stuff just gets pooped out, so it's not like you're made impure by it.
So here's some more on this.
Which would show complete ignorance of how digestion works at all.
Yeah, absolutely. So the mark in Jesus provides evidence for the claim that things going from outside into the body do not enter the heart by pointing out that they go instead to the belly. The basic meaning of the term koilia is hollow, and that's the word that's used there for belly, especially with reference to the human or animal body. It often refers to the stomach or intestines. Philo used the term to denote the digestive system. It is surely in the latter sense that it is used here. The comment that the things that come into the body from outside go out of it again and end up in the latrine satirizes the great concern about ingesting something impure, alluded to before, and makes the point that such concern would be better directed elsewhere. That I agree with. Out of all things you can concentrate on, that's not exactly the biggest thing.
Right. All right. And he said, that which cometh out of the man, that defileth the man. For from within, out of the heart of men, proceed evil thoughts, adulteries, fornications, murders, thefts, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, lasciviousness, an evil eye, blasphemy, pride, foolishness. All these evil things come from within and defile the man.
Yeah, like that's like the nature of the man himself, right? Mm-hmm. So it wouldn't be, the food or anything else defiling him. It would be all those things.
Mm-hmm. And from thence he arose and went to the borders of Tyre and Sidon, and entered into a house, and would have no man know it, but he could not be hid. For a certain woman, whose young daughter had an unclean spirit, heard of him, and came and fell at his feet. The woman was a Greek, a Syrophoenician by nation, and she besought him that he would cast forth the devil out of her daughter. But Jesus said unto her, let the children first be filled, for it is not meet to take the children's bread and cast it unto the dogs.
So here's the interesting. So verse 24a, so then he set out from there and went away into the region of Tyre. The setting of the narrative in Tyre is redactional. In 3:8, people from the region around Tyre come to Jesus. Here he goes to that region himself. The evangelist seems to have placed the story about the Syrophoenician woman in Tyre in order to relate this story to the dispute with the Pharisees in 7:1-23. Verse 19c indicates that Mark reinterpreted the saying of verse 15 so that it signifies the abrogation of the food laws. In line with this interpretation, he presents Jesus here as initiating the mission to the Gentiles, although in a hidden and reluctant way.
And here, with the Syrophoenician woman, Phoenicians from Syria as opposed to North Africa, she follows the tradition of righteous Gentiles, such as Ruth the Moabite, Achior the Ammonite, or Judith, or the craftsmen of Tyre and Sidon, Phoenician Canaanite cities. Elijah and Elisha also healed Gentiles in 1 Kings and 2 Kings. The Syrophoenician woman may represent Gentile converts who believed in Jesus as the Lord. But here again, as in Matthew, Jesus just calls this woman a dog.
That is true.
So, more racism out of the mouth of Jesus after he just said that all this stuff defiles men when they say.
Oh, here's some stuff on dogs actually.
Yeah. It's a generic insult.
Yeah, it is a generic insult, right? And obviously they're not literally dogs or anything. So Yeah, remember in Deuteronomy, a dog was used for male prostitutes.
Oh.
Yeah. And let's see, in rabbinic literature, dog is used metaphorically for a person who is unlearned in the scripture, Mishnah, and Talmud, for ungodly people and for Gentiles. In the Midrash on the Psalms, a parable is attributed to Rabbi Joshua ben Levi, in which the guests arriving for a banquet in the king's palace see dogs coming out with the heads of peasants and calves in their mouths. They exclaim, quote, "If the dogs are so well fed, imagine what the banquet will be like." The parable is applied to the great gifts given to the Gentiles in this world and to the even greater gifts that will be given to Israel in the next world. The Gentiles receive great gifts for observing the 7 Noachic commandments. So the Israelites will receive even greater gifts for observing the 613 commandments. Since the diminutive form of the word dog in verse 27, kunarion, probably does not have a diminutive connotation in the colloquial language of Mark, the term probably refers to the scavenging dogs of the streets. This passage is evidence that the metaphorical use among Jews of dogs for Gentiles was already current in the first century, which we already had in Matthew as well.
Yep. Let's continue on. And she answered and said unto him, Yes, Lord, yet the dogs under the table eat of the children's crumbs. And he said unto her, For this saying go thy way, the devil is gone out of thy daughter. And when she was gone to her house, she found the devil gone out, and her daughter laid upon the bed. And again, departing from the coasts of Tyre and Sidon, he came to the Sea of Galilee, through the midst of the coasts of Decapolis. And they bring unto him one that was deaf, and had an impediment in his speech. And they beseech him to put his hands upon him. And he took him aside from the multitude, and put his fingers into his ears, and he spit and touched his tongue. And looking up to heaven, he sighed, and saith unto him, Ephaphtha, that is, be opened. About this, it's an Aramaic word that Mark translates for his Gentile readers.
That would make sense. Yeah, this use of so he spit and then touched his tongue, right?
Yeah.
So Jesus then applies his.
He spat in his mouth.
Yep. The emphasis in this miracle story is on the therapeutic process. I don't know about that. Jesus does much more than simply lay a hand upon the man. First of all, he takes the man away from the crowd to heal him in private, still laying a hand on him. The logic of this motif is that it is not fitting for those not directly involved to see divine power at work.
So it's like Jesus is like a dominatrix. He like fingers this guy and then spits in his mouth, and that makes him better.
Jesus then puts his fingers into the man's ears. This gesture is a specific application of the motif of healing by touch. Okay, I wonder why it's so specific, but we can talk about that. Jesus then applies his own saliva to the man's tongue. According to Pliny the Elder, saliva as such had healing power. He wrote that it was beneficial in the treatment of venom poisoning as a deterrent to snakes and for superficial ailments. He mentions its remedial uses some 10 times throughout his natural history. He also said that saliva can calm mental anxiety if placed behind the ear with one's finger. He notes that saliva may be used to ward off witchcraft and that it increases the effectiveness of medical remedies. So that's really interesting, though, that they have this belief about saliva, that it could do all this stuff.
Interestingly enough, some of what they say is not entirely inaccurate. I mean, it isn't totally accurate, but there are medical
applications. How often do you put,
I tried it now.
Spit behind your ears?
I just tried it now.
And it saves you from a whole bunch of
I'm
disease.
saved. And that's not what I was saying as a joke.
Look,
No, legitimately, there are, like, if you apply saliva to a wound, or certain animals, not just us, licking their wounds, really does help prevent infection.
No, I get that.
It's interesting.
But, like, keeping snakes away.
No, I don't know about any of that.
I don't think that.
No,
That's just because you're a non-believer.
Oh, right.
But
also, you're not a snake handler. You don't know how useful that is.
So I want to note that the miracle of the healing of the deaf man is in some ways strange, and probably for this reason is omitted by Matthew and Luke. The former vaguely alludes to it in chapter 15, verses 29 through 31.
It's certainly an interesting way of doing it. Maybe that speaks to the cultural differences between Mark and Matthew.
Yeah, well, almost like Matthew didn't want to include a story where Jesus fingers a guy's ears and spits in his mouth. So where was I? Ephaphtah. And straightway his ears were opened, and the string of his tongue was loosed, and he spake plain. And he charged them that should tell no man. But the more he charged them, so much more a great deal they published it, and were beyond measure astonished, saying, He hath done all things well. He maketh both the deaf to hear and the dumb to speak.
Very good, very good.
And that is the end of that chapter. If you're enjoying the stream so far today, share it with your friends, family, neighbors, Ukrainians.
People's ears, they want to hear this.
Yeah.
And you may or may not want to finger those ears.
Oh, Pen Guy is on 2 podcasts now.
Is he really?
He posted on Facebook about it. And we still need to get him on here.
I didn't know. I saw him like a couple months ago. But that was really like the only time I saw him this year.
You know, it's really hard to get him on the show. We might have to...
He's also actually hard to contact.
Yes.
Like he just never gets back to people. And you know how many times he's asked me for like our Milwaukee Atheist business card, like with all the info on there?
Yeah.
Like so many times.
It gets lost in all the pens.
It does.
All
It gets lost in all the
pens.
pens. All right. So yeah, on to chapter 8, I believe, right?
Yeah. So you're going to start reading that.
I am. Yes.
I will be
That's me.
telling you things about it.
Oh, thank you. That's really kind of you. I don't know if you've ever done that before.
Nope. Never happened.
All right.
It's time for the second major feeding miracle.
Oh, okay, great. Because we had the feeding of the 5,000 or 4,000 before. One of those is up next.
Yeah, many commentators suspect that the 2 feeding stories are in fact versions of one episode.
Yeah, that makes sense.
3 factors support this position. 1, several common details in the setting and activities suggest common origin. 2, close parallels between Mark 8:1 through 10 and John 6:1 through 15 suggest that the feeding of the 4,000 was not the creations of the Markan evangelist. And 3, it is improbable that the disciples would for a second time wonder how a large crowd was able to be fed.
Yeah. Like at this point, they'd be like, okay, so yeah, Jesus can obviously do this thing. All right. So,
but this time it takes place in a predominantly Gentile area.
Sure. I also want to point out that the word for like a wonder at something is like also the same word for marvel at. So they could still it could just be amazed.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on the actual word, but they do have a word that is used for both. All right. So, chapter 8. In those days, when again a great crowd had gathered, and they had nothing to eat, he called his disciples to him, and said to them, I have compassion on the crowd, because they have been with me now 3 days, and have nothing to eat. And if I send them away hungry to their homes, they will faint on the way. And some of them have come from far away. And his disciples answered him, How can one feed these people with bread here in this desolate place? And he asked them, How many loaves do you have? They said 7. And he directed the crowd to sit down on the ground. And he took the 7 loaves, and having given thanks, he broke them and gave them to his disciples to set before the people. And they, wait, hold on. Totally missed a word here. And they set them before the crowd. And they had a few small fish. And having blessed them, he said that these also should be set before them. And they ate and were satisfied. And they took up the broken pieces left over. 7 baskets full. That's quite a bit that they have left over.
Yeah, it's may symbolize completeness, as in the days of creation, or the fullness of the praise is used 7 times a day in Psalm 119, 164.
And there were about 4,000 people, and he sent them away. And immediately he got into the boat with his disciples and went to the district of Dalmanutha.
So Dalmanutha is south of the plain of Gennesaret. A cave has been found bearing the name Dalmanutha, perhaps the spot where Jesus landed. Matthew says Jesus went to the vicinity of Magadan in Matthew 15:39. Dalmanutha and Magadan, or Magdala, located on the western shore of the Sea of Galilee, may be names for the same place or 2 places located close to each other. I also want to note that Jesus' disciples are like, where can anyone get enough bread to feed them? Even though they've literally seen this miracle before. The NIV explains this in a very interesting way. The disciples' question reflects their inadequacy and acknowledges that Jesus alone could feed the people. They had not forgotten his feeding of the 5,000 and were probably simply giving back to him the task of procuring bread. Alternatively, their question may reveal their spiritual dullness. They were slow learners.
Yeah.
All right, so it looks like this... Yeah, so you just talked about Dalmanutha. Yeah, and then this next section, the question of a sign and bread. So more Pharisees stuff. We're back at it again with the Pharisees. All right. The Pharisees came and began to argue with him, seeking from him a sign from heaven to test him.
Oh, but you don't test God.
Yeah, you don't test God. Yeah, that's one less point for the Pharisees.
Yeah, they wanted more compelling proof of Jesus' divine authority than his miracles, but he refused to perform such a sign because the request came from unbelief. I also want to know that according to both Jesus and according to the Hebrew Bible, miracles don't mean a damn thing, right? You can have false prophets who do miracles.
Yeah.
You can have people who follow false gods who do miracles.
Yeah.
You can have false messiahs who do miracles. So just doing miracles doesn't mean anything, and it's perfectly reasonable for the Pharisees to ask for something more substantial than just miracles.
Yeah. And he sighed deeply in his spirit and said, "Why does this generation seek a sign? Truly I say to you, no sign will be given to this generation." And he left them, got into the boat again, and went to the other side. Now that's interesting. That's interesting. No sign will be given to this generation. So of course, they won't see it. But I believe, wasn't there? Was it in Matthew? Where they said that it would happen, like was it the second coming, or was it the end where it would come before that generation passed away? Was it there? I think it was. Was that in Matthew, or am I thinking of like a different verse entirely?
There was a bit in Matthew that said something like that.
Either way, let's see what we get here. Yeah, okay, so Pharisees demand a sign with this generation. It is likely that this label does not simply denote the contemporaries of Jesus, but expresses the judgment that those who reject the person and message of Jesus are like the rebellious generation of the wandering in the wilderness. According to the Song of Moses, the Lord said, "For it is a perverse generation, sons in whom there is no faithfulness." The generation of the wilderness was also known for testing God. For example, when the people complained of having no water to drink, Moses said to them, "Why do you revile me, and why do you test the Lord?" Also reasonable to want something to drink. In portraying Jesus as refusing absolutely to give a sign from heaven, the author of Mark may be drawing a contrast between him and the eschatological prophets discussed by Josephus. The fulfillment of Theudas' prediction in 45 CE that the waters of the Jordan would part at his command was no doubt expected to be a sign from heaven that Theudas was God's eschatological agent who would inaugurate the rule of God on earth. Similarly, the Egyptian false prophet claimed, and these are all in Josephus, the Egyptian false prophet claimed around 56 CE that at his word, the walls of Jerusalem would fall down. In this passage, Mark criticizes both those who rejected Jesus during his lifetime and those who believed the false prophets who arose after his death. The rhetorical question of Jesus in verse 12 is followed by an oath in in the same verse. In the Bible, as in the ancient Near East, generally, oaths usually involved a curse that would fall upon the one who swore the oath if it turned out to be false. So, classic, perhaps not to the extent of Deuteronomy 28, but...
So let me give you a little more detail here. A sign, Greek semeon, Hebrew ot, the prophet's action that verifies that he has been sent from God, was commonly used for the end-time prophets Josephus describes. Signs are a common motif in the Hebrew Bible, and so the Pharisees' request might seem reasonable. Mark characterizes Jesus' miracles as acts of power, Greek dunamais, rather than signs, which would be semeon. Contrast.
So it would be expressions of power then.
Yeah, they are not signs, they're expressions of power. In the Hebrew Bible, signs are sometimes ignored. For example, in Exodus 4:8. God provides them as indications of a promise. They're often ignored.
All right, so now they had forgotten to bring bread, and they had only one loaf with them in the boat. And he cautioned them, saying, "Watch out! Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod."
Yes, the yeast of the Pharisees and that of Herod. Here is generally in the New Testament, yeast is a symbol of evil or corruption. The metaphor includes the idea that a tiny amount of yeast being able to ferment a large amount of dough. The idea of a tiny amount of yeast being able to ferment a large amount of dough. In this context, it refers to the evil dispositions of both the Pharisees and Herod Antipas, who called for Jesus to produce a sign, i.e. a proof of his divine authority. Even though, until this point, he didn't seem to be too bothered by that.
Nope.
Oh, okay. So here's something kind of neat. So a variant of the saying in Mark 8:15 occurs. A variant of the saying in Mark 8:15 occurs in Luke 12:1. In the latter, the leaven of the Pharisees is interpreted as hypocrisy. Matthew's form of the saying is dependent on Mark's, but the author of Matthew has changed Herod to the Sadducees and interpreted the leaven as teaching. In Matthew 16:6. And 11 through 12. It may be that the image of the leaven itself here is neutral, indicating that every person or group exerts an influence, whether good or bad. In this case, the emphasis would be on the Gentiles, the Pharisees, and Herod, rather than on the image of yeast as such. Harold Hoehner has argued that the warning against the leaven of the Pharisees concerned their expectation of a Messiah who would establish a national political kingdom based on, quote, purely external political power. He interpreted the leaven of Herod in relation to, quote, his desire to maintain his position as sovereign by external political means. The text of Mark, however, does not associate the theme of external political power with the Pharisees or Herod. More plausibly, Rolandinus, I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Rolandinus.
Yep. Has suggested that the saying is a polemical adaptation of the self-understanding of the Pharisees as the leaven that makes the whole batch of dough rise, the holy remnant. Their ability to compromise and to cooperate with the Herodians and the Sadducees is criticized by the Mark and Jesus as a turning aside from the new reality of the dawning kingdom of God.
Yeah. I mean, the metaphor is kind of carrying over from the feeding narrative that just occurred. Obviously, yeast and leaven being used in bread. Where don't eat their bread, eat this bread. Yeah.
And they began discussing with one another the fact that they had no bread. Imagine that conversation.
Guys, we don't have any bread.
We don't have bread.
We just don't have bread.
Did you know that we don't have bread?
He just did this miracle thing where
here's a fifth
Why does
version.
he just make more bread? Come on.
Well, apparently they need bread for this miracle to work. He needs a little bit of material to work with.
Oh, so he doesn't create it. He makes it.
No, he has to do something with already existing bread. Yeah.
You know, there was an argument in the Talmud regarding
bread.
No, creation in general, right? In Genesis, and whether God creates things out of material or if he just makes them pop into existence. It's an interesting bit. There's obviously different interpretations of it. Some use the language to claim that there's different things that are created and different things that are made.
Oh, okay.
Right. But yeah, it's an interesting bit. It kind of follows from the ancient Greek philosophers, the pre-Socratics, who argued for a material monism, where they were like, oh, well, everything that exists is made of water. Water is the original thing, that kind of thing.
Gotcha. No, see, it goes on here. It goes on.
Yeah.
And so they're talking about how they didn't have any bread. And Jesus, aware of this, said to them, "Why are you discussing the fact that you have no bread? Do you not yet perceive or understand? Are your hearts hardened? Having eyes, do you not see? And having ears, do you not hear? And do you not remember? When I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000, how many baskets full of broken pieces did you take up?" They said to him, 12.
It was 7.
That was how many loaves of bread they took. They took 7 loaves.
Where is this 12?
In verse 19. Because they took 7 loaves. And then it goes on to say here, and the 7 for the 4,000. Oh, no, he's talking about, oh, wait, this is an inclusion of both stories?
Now,
Yeah, the 5,000 and the 4,000.
See,
right.
in verse 8, afterwards, the disciples picked up 7 basketfuls.
No. Remember the 2 feeding narratives, right?
Yeah, there was a previous feeding narrative, yeah.
Yeah. So that was in Mark 6, I think. So because it mentions both here. So when I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000, how many baskets full of broken pieces did you take up? And the answer to that is 12. And then Jesus says, and the 7 for the 4,000, how many baskets full of broken pieces did you take up?
All right, it was 12 back then.
Yeah. So it's both. It's both those narratives.
So he's trying to remind his dolts that happened already twice.
It happened twice.
Yeah.
And now he's like, don't you get it? Don't you get it yet?
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting here. And that's the end of that section. And they came to Bethsaida, and some people brought to him a blind man and begged him to touch him. And he took the blind man by the hand and led him out of the village. And when he had spit in his eyes and laid his hands on him, he asked him, "Do you see anything?" And he looked up and said, "I see people, but they look like trees walking."
So the NIV notes, the man had no doubt bumped into trees in his blindness. Now he dimly sees something like tree trunks moving about. It says here, okay, about Bethsaida. At the upper end of the Sea of Galilee in the territory of Herod Philip, one of Herod the Great's sons, who ruled 4 BCE to 34 CE. Philip rebuilt the city and named it Bethsaida Julius after Julia, one of Augustus's daughters. Matthew and Luke omit this episode, perhaps because it depicts Jesus' inability to heal immediately. This two-stage healing may anticipate the two-stage reception of Jesus' messianic identity. The disciples lack clear vision. They understand Jesus is the Messiah, but they don't know what the term means, and only grasp the full reality after Jesus' death and after the close of Mark's gospel.
You know, I wonder if anyone knows this. So you know how there are plenty of churches that do like the whole healing thing, right? Like
Faith healing.
yeah, the whole faith healing thing. Is there any sect that also like spits in people's eyes and ears and does that thing?
I've never heard of that.
Like, that's what I'm interested to know, if there are any of those around. Because it seems like, you know, Jesus is using that as a means of healing.
Yeah.
Now, of course, it would be his power ultimately, I think. But, you know,
he uses his spit for a lot in these chapters.
That's true. Yeah, he does.
He spits in a guy's mouth. Spits in a guy's eyes.
That's how you heal. That's how you heal, apparently. So, you know, maybe with yeah, not during COVID. Yeah, that's true. Those sects have been shut down by the CDC.
Well, why don't they just spit on people's lungs?
Yeah, directly on them.
That's the cure for COVID, right?
Cut them right open.
Spit cures blindness, deafness, and muteness. So why wouldn't it cure COVID?
Yeah, figure that one out, faith healers. All right, let's continue on here. So,
you know, that would be a really effective way of converting people to your faith. If you were like, yeah, we legitimately can end a pandemic.
That would be pretty impressive. I would be impressed.
Yep.
Then Jesus laid his hands on his eyes again, and he opened his eyes. His sight was restored, and he saw everything clearly. And he sent him to his home, saying, "Do not even enter the village." So was he going to the village to look for a doctor or something?
Maybe he lived there.
Well, I mean,
so as to not broadcast what Jesus had done for him and precipitate a crisis before Jesus had completed his ministry.
I guess that would make sense, right? Because he had the whole thing about, you know, not telling people. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I guess the secret one would make sense, keeping it a secret.
Yeah. So now we're getting into a long section that we're not going to finish today, which is Jesus' instruction to his disciples.
Right. It goes on through, it seems, through chapter 10.
Yep. But we do get the first passion prediction here.
Ah, okay. Good. Very good. All right. So, Peter confesses Jesus as the Christ. Ooh, okay. And Jesus went on with his disciples to the villages of Caesarea Philippi.
Yeah, Caesarea Philippi, originally called Panion after the god Pan, to whom there was an important cult site. It was refounded under Herod's son Philip, who renamed it in honor of the emperor and himself. A major temple, probably dedicated to the emperor, has been discovered nearby, perhaps because it was situated near a spring, a source of the Jordan River, and below a sacred mountain, Mount Hermon. This location became a sacred site for different gods. The The ancient Israelite shrine of Dan was near here, and 1 Enoch 13:7 describes this setting as the site of the revelations to Enoch. Not only Peter's confession, but also the Transfiguration.
Hey, shout out to Enoch.
Yeah, shout out to Enoch. Not only Peter's confession, but also the Transfiguration is located in this area, important to Jews and non-Jews alike. The mountain of the Transfiguration is not named, but the proximity in the text would suggest to an ancient audience that it was Mount Hermon. After the Transfiguration and the healing in 9:14 through 29, Jesus and his disciples go into Galilee and arrive at Capernaum on the northwestern shore of the Sea of Galilee and not far from the border with Philip's tetrarchy.
And on the way, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" And they told him, "John the Baptist, and others say Elijah, and others one of the prophets." And he asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter answered him, "You are the Christ." And he strictly charged them to tell no one about it. It's like, yeah, that's right, and don't tell anyone, I guess.
Yeah, so Christ or Messiah, Mashiach, right? Because popular Jewish ideas associated with the term Christ were largely political and national, Jesus seldom used it. Of its 7 occurrences in Mark, only 3 appear in the sayings Jesus, and in none of these does he use the title himself, with the possible exception of 9:41. Mark identifies Jesus as the Christ in 1:1, though, as we've noted before, it's not necessarily the Christ, but a Christ, an anointed one of the house of David, one who has the royal bloodline.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. And he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. And he said this plainly, and Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But turning and seeing his disciples, he rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man." So is he calling him? Is he calling Peter Satan here? At least like as an epithet, I guess, like calling him like an adversary, I suppose.
See Zechariah 3:2, where in the presence of the high priest Joshua, Jesus in Greek, God rebukes Satan with similar language. Peter cannot imagine a Messiah who suffers and dies, and Jesus' sharp response defines this passage as a central, defining moment in the gospel. Jewish tradition often considered the suffering of good people, as in Proverbs 3:12, the Lord reproves the one he loves, and Sanhedrin 101a through b. But here, the issue is the role of the Messiah. Other texts understood the suffering of the Messiah by referring to Isaiah 52:13 through 53:12, but Mark does not cite this passage and only hints at it in 10:45 and a few other places.
Yeah. So it seems here that he's using Satan as like, you're acting just like the devil himself. Like, shut up. don't be a Satan. All right. And calling the crowd to him with his disciples, he said to them, "If anyone would come after me, let him."
Wait.
Oh, sorry.
So the reason that he says Satan, Peter's attempt to dissuade Jesus from going to the cross held the same temptation Satan gave at the outset of Jesus' ministry, as in Matthew 4:8 through 10. So Jesus rebukes him.
Yeah, makes sense. All right. Where was I? Right. Okay. So for whoever would save his life. No, I didn't finish that sentence. And calling the crowd to him with his disciples, he said to them, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it. but whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will save it.
Right. Obviously, not literally their life, but their eternal life.
Sure. Yeah. Because otherwise that wouldn't make any sense.
Right.
So, for what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? For what can a man give in return for his soul? For whoever is ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of him will the Son of Man also be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels. So once everything is said and done, if you were ashamed of Jesus, he'll be ashamed of you.
Yeah. So see Romans 1:16. A person who is more concerned about fitting into and pleasing his own adulterous and sinful generation than about following and pleasing Christ will have no part in God's kingdom.
Apparently so. And that is the end of chapter 8. Hey, if you guys are enjoying the stream so far, drop a like, subscribe if you haven't, all that shared around with all your friends, family, Satans.
And Lawrence, do you hear a word from our sponsors?
No, but I do hear something.
Yeah, it's a word from our sponsors.
It's a...
Behold, I am your Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And I want to let all you heathens and sinners know that I support this wonderful episode of Atheist Sunday School. Lawrence and Reuben try their very best to bring you the true glory of the Bible, and they need your help. They have provided links to their Patreon page and other social media just for you. Once again, my name is Jesus Christ, and this is Milwaukee Atheists. The Lord is with them. God bless.
Wow. Hey, Jesus. We're just reading about you. Thanks for stopping in. We really, really appreciate
thanks
that.
for sponsoring the show, bro.
Yeah, it's really, really nice of you to really appreciate what we do. We don't get that a lot.
No.
But it's very nice.
But
very
our
nice.
viewers appreciate what we
I'm
do.
sure they do. They must, right?
Thank you, Ellis. Look at him showing his appreciation. See, Lawrence, people do appreciate what we do.
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. Once in a while.
Specifically, Ellis.
Yeah, specifically Ellis.
Thank you, Al.
Very much appreciate it, Ellis. Thank you.
Yes. So how about I jump into chapter 9, the last chapter of the day for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Are you ready, Lawrence?
It says that in the Bible?
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Mark 9:1.
Buy
Oh,
some bread,
Holy
guys.
crap. All right.
Yeah,
Buy
no.
some bread. We didn't
No, it
apparently
doesn't.
have any bread. Now we can buy some bread.
It
Now we
doesn't
can,
say
yeah.
that in the Bible.
It says
Anyways,
that right there from Ellis.
yeah. Thank you, Ellis. We will use that.
Definitely to buy bread.
Yeah. Thank you, Carlos.
Carlos with the $4.99. Look at you guys.
We can. I mean, that's more of a bread price. Honestly.
No. Ellis wants us to have the highest quality bread.
Or 12 baskets full of the lowest quality bread.
That's also potentially true, actually. Yeah. And maybe Carlos just wants us to have bread.
Yeah.
A bread.
You know how
singular.
fast bread goes bad? Particularly
Bad.
bread from 2,000 years ago.
Oh, well, that's just beyond saving.
Yeah, I mean, these disciples, you can have 12 basketfuls of bread, right?
Mm.
How fast are you going to eat 12 baskets of bread?
Well, if it's the only thing you have to eat, like probably a few days, like 3, 4 maybe.
You hope that you'll get through it in a few days because otherwise you're going to be eating moldy bread.
That's true, yeah.
It's going to be gross.
That's true.
Anyways, chapter 9. And he said unto them, Verily I say unto you, that there
we
be...
got Carlos with another
Carlos.
$9.99. It really, man.
Thanks again.
They're
Yeah.
fighting for the number one spot that no one.
They're doing battle.
they're doing battle. Yeah,
Well, we should let them.
we should let them do battle.
Fight it out, guys. Go ahead. great place to do that. No violence can be had here.
No violence.
Non-violent competition.
Yeah, no hanky panky in the chat.
See, it's like an eBay bidding war, except you don't get your initial bids back.
You get a great reaction from us, though. We'll just keep freaking out.
So, verily I say unto you that there be some of them that stand here which shall not taste of death till they have seen the kingdom of God come with power.
All right. Pretty big there. So Perrin's, that's a scholar, Perrin. Perrin's arguments in support of his conclusion that 9:1 is a Markan composition are: 1, Mark uses verbs of seeing in connection with the parousia, that being the second coming, whereas Matthew and Luke have this usage only in dependence on Mark. Mark is distinctive in using the terms glory, doxa, and power, dunamis, in connection with the parousia, especially in combination. These arguments are not compelling. They do not exclude the possibility that 9:1 is in part at least a traditional saying that has influenced Mark's usage elsewhere in the gospel. Perrin is right, however, in stressing that the way in which the saying combines Jewish apocalyptic ideas with the traditions about the kingdom of God that are typical of the Jesus tradition. A passage in 2nd Esdras is quite similar to 9:1 in content. And it shall come to pass that whoever remains after all that I have foretold to you shall himself be saved, and shall see my salvation at the end of my world, and they shall see men who were taken up, who from their birth have not tasted death.
Curious.
Yeah, so the coming of the kingdom of God, if you survive the to use the term loosely, apocalypse, then you're saved, right?
I guess.
Yeah.
And after 6 days, Jesus taketh with him Peter and James and John, and leadeth them up into a high mountain
But just to be
apart
clear-
by themselves, and he was transfigured before them.
All right, so before we get into the transfiguration thing, just to be clear, I don't think it would be like surviving the apocalyptic world. I think it would be like surviving God's judgment. I think it's kind of a tautology, actually, because like the people that God has judged to be, kind of good, like good in his book, would be the ones that would survive.
Right.
Which just, yes. Like by definition, yes.
So he's being transfigured here. Let's see if this stacks up to Enoch's transfiguration in the Metatron. I bet it doesn't.
Well, no, probably not. Nothing can add up to that.
No.
So the transfiguration, the conversation about resurrection, Elijah and the Son of Man, and the exorcism of the epileptic young man are linked together topographically on the mountain, on the way down from the mountain, and at the foot of the mountain. In all three units, disciples play an important role. Peter, James, and John in the first two, and the larger group in the exorcism. The second two accounts concern the instruction of the disciples, and the first climaxes with an imperative address to them. Let's talk about let's get through this story, and then we can talk about the transfiguration as a whole.
All right. And his raiment became shining, exceeding white as snow, so as no fuller on earth can white them. And there appeared unto them Elijah with Moses, and they were talking with Jesus. And Peter answered and said to Jesus, Master, it is good for us to be here, and let us make 3 tabernacles, one for thee, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. For he wist not what to say, for they were sore afraid. And there was a cloud that overshadowed them, and a voice came out of the cloud, saying, This is my beloved Son, hear him. And suddenly, when they had looked round about, they saw no man any more, save Jesus only with themselves. And as they came down from the mountain, he charged them that they should tell no man what things they had seen till the Son of Man were risen from the dead. And they kept that saying with themselves, questioning one with another what the rising from the dead should mean. And they asked him, saying, Why say the scribes that Elijah must first come? And he answered and he told them, Elijah verily cometh first and restoreth all things, and how is written of the Son of Man, that he must suffer many things and be set at naught. But I say unto you that Elijah is indeed come, and they have done unto him whatsoever they listed, as it is written of him. And when he came to his disciples, he saw a great multitude about them, and the scribes questioning with them. And straightway all the people, when they beheld him, were greatly amazed, and running to him, saluted him. And he asked the scribes, What question ye with them?
It's interesting here. So they, like back when he was, where you did have the Transfiguration, right? Like they looked around, and it wasn't, they didn't see anyone. They didn't see something there, but only Jesus with them. So it was just that guy.
First they see them, and then
right. They didn't see anyone but Jesus. So this verse implies that immediately after the sound of the divine voice, the cloud, Elijah and Moses disappeared, and Jesus returned to his normal state. This sudden change suggests that the divine voice. Okay, yeah, it's the climax. Yeah. So obviously, divine voice, probably God, right? Let's just take a shot in the dark there and say that's God. The voice from the clouds, I wonder who that could be. So,
Timmy? Yeah, he got lost in the clouds.
Oh, shit, Timmy. Glad we found you, man.
So Mark's depiction of Jesus is reminiscent of Daniel's vision of the Ancient of Days, whose clothing was white as snow and hair in his head like pure wool. The one, like the Son of Man, approaches the Ancient of Days, i.e. God, and receives authority and kingdom, according to Daniel 7:13 through 14. Perhaps in his transformation, we should understand that Jesus, as the Son of Man, has taken on some of the characteristics of the Ancient of Days, when his presence, much as Moses' face, begins to shine with God's glory. If this is correct, then the Transfiguration should be understood as a visual verification of Jesus' claim to be the Son of Man, who will come in the glory of his Father with the holy angels. Moses and Elijah are said to have appeared and to have spoken with Jesus. These two are often paired up. The two witnesses of Revelation 11:3 through 12 could very well be Moses and Elijah. However, Elijah sometimes is paired up with Enoch. See 2nd Esdras and the Apocalypse of Elijah.
Yeah, which we did read. And in the Apocalypse of Elijah, Enoch and Elijah team up. They team up to destroy Satan himself.
Yep.
And we did read that.
And they have this epic Dragon Ball Z battle over a city.
Yeah, essentially.
And they lose.
They do lose.
They get wrecked.
Yeah.
But then they come back and
just like in
again.
DBZ, you get wrecked and then they come back.
Yeah.
So the rabbis include Moses and Elijah and some midrash.
So just one thing here. So it is likely that the indirect depiction of Elijah's being killed upon his return in Revelation 11 is Christian in origin. It is unlikely that the prophecy referred to here is a typological reading of the persecution of the earthly Elijah in 1 Kings 19:2 through 10. It is probable that the reference is to Scripture, but not to a single passage. On the assumption that John the Baptist was a prophet, the Markan Jesus refers to a pervasive spiritual motif, namely the rejection of the person and the message of the prophet, which sometimes involves the threat or even the actuality of his death. Verses 12 through 13 establish a parallel between Elijah, that would be John the Baptist, and Jesus, that would be the Messiah, Son of Man. Elijah has come, and in fulfillment of Scripture has suffered. The Messiah has come, and in fulfillment of Scripture, he will suffer. The placement of the saying about the suffering Son of Man in the center makes the whole speech another prophecy of the Passion. The passage implies that the expanded eschatological role acknowledged for Elijah in verse 12a was not fulfilled because of the rejection of John by the leaders of the people and his death at the hands of Herod Antipas. A further implication is that Jesus, during his ministry and when he returns as Son of Man, will fulfill the hopes associated with Elijah and more.
Yep. All right, let's continue on here. And one of the multitude answered and said, Master, I have brought unto thee my son, which hath a dumb spirit. Dumb spirit.
Dumb spirit.
You know what? I feel like I'm going to start saying that about people. They have a dumb spirit.
Mm-hmm. And wheresoever he taketh him, he teareth him. And he foameth, and gnasheth with his teeth, and pineth away. And I spake to thy disciples that they should cast him out, and they could not. So this kid has some kind of seizure disorder. He answered him and said, O faithless generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I suffer you? Bring him unto me. Wow. He's kind of being a dick. Yeah. He's like, yeah, I guess I'll heal your son.
I guess.
How long do I have to deal with this shit?
He's already tired of living.
Yep.
What verse are you on?
I just finished 19. I'm on 20.
Okay.
And they brought him unto him, and when he saw him, straightway the spirit tear him, and he fell on the ground and wallowed foaming. And he asked his father, How long is it ago since this came upon him? And he said, Of a child. And oft times it hath cast him into the fire, and into the waters to destroy him. But if thou canst do anything, have compassion on us and help us. And Jesus said unto him, If thou canst believe, all things are possible to him that believeth. And straightway the father of the child cried out and said with tears, Lord, I believe, help thou mine unbelief.
Okay, so yeah, I just wanted to say, like, of the child there.
Yeah, I was going to say.
That's a really weird thing.
Bad phrasing probably means, like, since he was a kid. That's my guess.
So in fact, it's so weird that, so it should be in there, right? Of the child. That is what the Greek says. It says paidio of a child in this case, because I don't actually know if it has the article in there. But either way, so copyists and correctors added the words, hold on, let me see this. So copyists and correctors added the words meta dakruon with so it says with tears, but it would be like while crying. With tears as in tearing, right? I don't know. It's spelled the same. In the later manuscripts to increase the emotional content of the narrative. So with, like, while crying or because of the crying. If the phrase were present originally in the text, no good reason can be found to explain why it was omitted.
Okay. So, when Jesus saw that the people came running together, he rebukes the foul spirit, saying unto him, Thou dumb and deaf spirit, I charge thee, come out of him, and enter no more into him. And the spirit cried out and rent him sore, and came out of him, and he was as one dead, insomuch that many said, He is dead.
It could also be among those crying. That's another possible interpretation. Either way.
Okay. So this kid, like, flails around and then lies perfectly still, and people are like, He's dead. But Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him up, and he arose. And when he was come into the house, his disciples asked him privately, Why could not we cast him out? And he said unto them, This kind can come forth by nothing but by prayer and fasting. And they departed thence, and passed through Galilee, and he would not that any man should know it. For he taught his disciples, and said unto them, The Son of Man is delivered into the hands of men, and they shall kill him. And after that he is killed, he shall rise on the third day. But they understood not that saying, and were afraid to ask him. And he came to Capernaum, and being in the house, he asked them, What was it that ye disputed among yourselves by the way? But they had their peace, for by the way they had disputed among themselves who should be the greatest. And he sat down and called the 12 and saith unto them, If any man desire to be first, the same shall be last of all and servant of all. Now, this is interesting. So, if you recall, it's Peter who is the rock, right?
Yeah.
Right? And on this rock, Jesus builds his church, right? So, when the Catholics say that Peter was the first pope, that implies a position of leadership, especially after Jesus' death, where these disciples would presumably be lesser than Peter. But here, Jesus is outright like, none of you are better than any one of the other. You know what? Whoever thinks they're better is actually worse. Right?
That makes sense, yeah.
So, that seems to spit in the face of the Catholic tradition, right?
You mean it heals the Catholic tradition?
No.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyways.
It keeps snakes away from the Catholic tradition?
Yes, that's exactly what I meant.
Okay.
Anyways. And he took a child and set him in the midst of them. And when he had taken him in his arms, he said unto them, Whosoever shall receive one of such children in my name receiveth me. And whosoever shall receive me receiveth not me, but him that sent me. And John answered him, saying, Master, we saw one casting out devils in thy name, and he followed not us. And we forbade him, because he followed not us. But Jesus said, Forbid him not, for there is no man which shall do a miracle in my name that can lightly speak evil of me. For he is not against us in our part. For whosoever shall give you a cup of water to drink in my name, because ye belong to Christ, verily I say unto you, he shall not lose his reward. And whosoever shall offend one of these little ones that believe in me, it is better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck, and he were cast into the sea.
Wow.
Yeah. And if thy hand offend thee, cut it off. It is better for thee to enter into life maimed, than having two hands to go into hell, into the fire that shall never be quenched.
So we had that also in Matthew, of course.
Right at the very end, and there was some discussion about it, where we came to the conclusion that an everlasting fire could also be translated as a long-lasting fire, at least in Matthew. And that's the only time that hell and a fire that couldn't be quenched really was brought up. Here, this is happening much earlier on, because it only happens after the death of Jesus in Matthew.
So here's some stuff here. So in the Old Testament and the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Hebrew word hand is sometimes used euphemistically for the penis. It is unlikely.
So when God writes with his finger,
okay. Wow, hilarious.
it's like when you write in the snow.
It is unlikely that this is the referent in verse 43. Rather, the idea of the hand giving offense alludes to adultery with the hand. So that is...
Oh, wow.
Yeah, let's see. Masturbation, probably by males. In the Mishnah, it is stated that, quote, every hand...
Well, there's no issue for females. They can't spill their seed.
Right. Every hand which... This is in the Mishnah. Every hand which frequently examines the genitals for symptoms, for example, menstruation, is among women praiseworthy, but among men, let it be cut off. In the Babylonian Talmud, this is explained as a punishment for masturbation by men. Wow. Holy shit, that's horrifying.
The Babylonian Talmud is the more authoritative one.
Yeah. A debate is recorded in the same context as to whether this punishment is a law or merely an execration, that is, a cursing. On the one hand, a case is cited in which Rabbi Huna actually cut off the hand of someone who was accustomed to strike other people, in accordance with the analogous command in Job 38:15. On the other hand, the decision of Rabbi Tarfon is reported, quote, if his hand touched the membrum, let his hand be cut off upon his belly. And the objection is also reported that his belly would then be split.
Yeah.
Rabbi Tarfon's response is, quote, it is preferable that his belly shall be split rather than that he should go down into the pit of destruction.
Okay.
Holy shit. See, I mean, we talked about that before about like if something is causing you to sin, like cut it off, sort of thing.
Right.
Like, which of course in Matthew we talked about, wouldn't. I mean, it's probably not literal here either, right?
But sometimes.
Yeah, apparently sometimes. That's. Guys, calm down.
Yeah.
It's just masturbation. It's okay.
Where their worm dieth not, and the fire is not quenched, and if thy foot offend thee, cut it off. It is better for thee to enter halt into life, than giving 2 feet to be cast into hell, into the fire that shall never shall be quenched. Where their worm dieth not. Of course,
being Gehenna there.
Yeah. Where their worm dieth not, and the fire is not quenched. And if thine eye offend thee, pluck it out. It is better for thee to enter into the kingdom of God with 1 eye than having 2 eyes to be cast into hellfire, where their worm dieth not, and the fire is not quenched. For every one shall be salted with fire, and every sacrifice shall be salted with salt. Salt is good. But
I agree.
If the salt have lost its saltiness, wherewith will ye season it? Have salt in yourselves, and have peace one with another.
All right. Well, I agree that salt is very good.
Salt is good.
I put salt on pretty much everything.
Lawrence is going to have a heart attack.
I am probably going to have a heart attack. So anyways, yeah, that's the reading for the day. I talked about a good amount of stuff.
So the worms not dying pops up a few times there, and that's kind of like what we run into in the Testament of Job, where he has these worms growing out of his body. The idea is that the worms are present with trash, and that they're always there. So these worms never die because the trash is piling up. The unquenchable fire, and of course the trash is people who don't cut off their limbs and pluck out their eyes.
Well, you know what? I did always say I was trash, so I'm not gonna cut off my limbs or cut out my eyes.
And yes, you're trash.
Yeah,
oh, well.
I'm trash.
At least you can use your arms and legs.
With that last statement there, he talks about salting the sacrifice.
Yeah,
and basically that the righteous, good people are sacrifices to God, right? Which, if taken literally, that would be, against the Mosaic law.
It would be like an offering to God, essentially.
Right. But
like the Levites.
But I think it's very interesting. Odin, in Norse mythology, he plucks out his own eye.
He does, yeah.
And
he throws it
into the well of Mimir.
Yeah.
And he gets special divine knowledge from doing so. But Odin also hangs himself as a sacrifice to himself.
Yeah.
So that reminded me of Odin there, that whole last section here. So anyways, that was our readings for the day.
Yeah.
What did you learn?
Well, I learned that I'm not going to cut out my eyes or my hands.
Snakes hate spit.
Yeah,
He
that's
just
right.
said that it's better to do that.
Listen, I know what he said, but I'm not going to.
Yeah, the snakes hate spit. That's the only thing I learned.
Spit has healing powers beyond our comprehension.
Yep.
So like, yeah,
Jesus likes it when people call him master and he spits in their mouth. That is a thing that happens in the Bible.
Yeah. And he seems to help them out. with that. Does do some healings with that, but yes, it does.
It makes them feel good.
Yeah, it has big Dom energy. So
What the hell, man?
yeah.
So Patreon, check us out on there. Pay us $50 a month and get on the show. You know what? There's also t-shirts.
Yeah, you can get a t-shirt. Unfortunately it doesn't look like the new ones are popping up, but there are new ones.
What's going on?
Maybe we have to retire some old ones.
Maybe we do. I don't know.
Yeah, some of the worst ones.
No, we could do like a sale.
Yeah, we could do a sale. Tune in next week for our sale plan. And what else? We have an Amazon wish list full of books.
We do.
Yeah, check out those books. We have an email address, and we have a contest going on right now.
Oh, right. Okay, so if there seems to be a decent amount of people here. Okay, so we read on Friday Apocryphal Podcast, we read the story of Ahikar. So if you listen to our narrative reading of it, it would be the first half of the story of Ahikar, because the second half is the sayings portion.
Yeah.
So it doesn't actually have an ending, as in it doesn't exist. Like, we don't have the ending.
Missing 2 pages and then 6 pages.
It's missing a whole bunch of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like, there have been different versions made, but we want to see your ending. If you can write a very, very good ending of Ahikar, I guess we're holding a contest for that, right? Like, who can write the best ending of the story of Ahikar?
No furry / fiction, but pretty much everything else is good. And send us your Ahikar fan fiction endings, and whoever writes the best one gets a t-shirt.
Yeah, that's how that works. I think it'll be fun, right? I think it sounds fun. We could probably read them on a show or something.
And if you're also feeling creative, you can send in a Lawrence diss track to
That'd be pretty cool.
MilwaukeeAtheists@gmail.com.
Pretty cool.
Yep.
Let's see. That's most of the shilling I gotta do. Facebook and Twitter. Free to follow us on those platforms.
Yeah, BitChute.
Oh, fuck. Let's not talk about that.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, Lawrence is too lazy to upload the videos onto BitChute.
Listen, man, they're big files, and they're all
Do
here.
it here.
They're all here.
Yeah, and they're all here. Yeah, do it here.
So I hope you all enjoyed seeing Daddy Jesus spitting in people's mouths.
And their ears. And their eyes. Yeah. Either way, thanks for joining us, everybody.
And we'll see you for the Apocalypse of Adam on Friday.
Yes,
Yeah.
Apocalypse of Adam on Friday.
Fridays. Don't miss it. If you're either there
Or you're not.
You're being cast into hellfire.
Or you're there later. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you on Friday
and then
for
Sunday,
the Apocalypse
and then Friday,
of Adam.
and then Sunday,
It's a different
and then
apocalypse.
Friday, and
Different
then
one from the ones we've
Sunday.
read.